Charles, Chinese researchers have been charged with bringing a toxic fungus into Michigan. It reportedly targets rice, barley, and other things. What happens next on this? Where does this go? What will this really mean for Americans when our grocery prices are already through the roof?
Well, as part of this border crisis, we've seen a 3,500% surge of Chinese nationals, middle-aged men primarily, that have been allowed into the United States, either, again, illegally through the borders or exploiting programs like student visas. This has to stop. We have to recognize as a country that China is an adversary. Look, why don't we see this in reverse? Why don't we see an overwhelming amount of students going into China to study? I can tell you why. Because China's worried about spying. China is worried about adversaries placing individuals within the interior of their country to carry out some sort of military actions in the event they ever got to that point. Yet we don't think the way China does when it comes to our own national security. At least we didn't under the Biden administration. And so as a result, now we have all of these Chinese nationals in the country. And we're going to see that we're going to have big problems when it comes to China and their assets that have been allowed to study in our major universities, work in our major corporations, infiltrate government positions. Look, the list goes on and on. We know what China does when it comes to intellectual property theft. If we ever got to a point of conflict with China, would the first strike come from the interior of the country? From Chinese nationals that have been planted here in strategic locations? Very likely, yes. Would the first strike be cyber? Very likely, yes. And would it be carried out by Chinese nationals? Yes. So, we've got to start thinking like our adversaries here, but the Biden administration wasn't thinking anything about that. Ali Mayorkas, then Secretary of Homeland Security, certainly wasn't thinking about it. And you know what? These people still need to answer for what they did while they were in office, and Congress needs to make sure that happens.